While I do not profess to be the world's leading authority by any stretch of the imagination, I do work in film and media, and when I originally made this channel, I thought the name could have some interesting double meaning to it, looking at both watches and watching films for its content. Clearly, I've only really followed up on one half of that plan. I did get partway through planning a documentary called Watches in Film, a way of combining these two passions, but after a few months of script writing, I already knew that it was going to have such a ridiculous runtime that it simply wasn't feasible for me to actually produce. Instead, I wanted to take that core idea and condense it down into smaller parts, focusing on individual watches and films rather than trying to tackle the entire subject at once. I thought the best place to begin with was one of my favourite film and watch combinations, the A100 from Casio, and of course, Alien. With all that said, let's get into the video. I think of every film genre, science fiction is probably my favourite, because it activates that deep internal fear of the unknown inbuilt into us as a species, while also drawing upon the equally primal desire to know and explore, to push the boundaries of human existence. That is, of course, if it's done well. Just to give you a little bit of background, as this is the first video I'm making like this, I'll rattle off some of my favourite films from the genre so you can get some insight into my perspective. Of course, there is Alien, which I love so much aesthetically because for me, it is such a believable world created on the screen. It puts me in mind of another favourite, Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, which to me is very high praise, as I feel it is without equal. There is something just so special about early science fiction films that couldn't rely heavily on CGI. I'm a big fan of Aliens too, though I'm less keen on the rest of the franchise. Outside of that, District 9, Sunshine, WALL-E, the new Dune films, The Thing, Interstellar and Blade Runner are all up there for me. On the less critically acclaimed side, I do also love Starship Troopers, the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and the original Bill and Ted films. So I can appreciate a great film, but I'm definitely not above some turn your brain off and enjoy fun either. When it comes to watches in Alien, our protagonist Ripley and indeed Dallas both wear a Samani E125, the design of which combines two separate watches meshed together over an orange casing. While never discussed in the film, it can be assumed that this would make tracking the local time on the Nostromo with that of Thetis or Earth a little easier. In reality, the watch consisted of two Casios, first plastic F100 watches attached together. Before we move on though, I do think Samani branding is interesting. The company is fictional, but just like Casio is based on Earth in Japan. I say the branding is interesting primarily because as the franchise has grown, it feels more and more like everything and indeed everyone is owned by Weyland-Yutani. So I think it's a cool tidbit that there are still watchmakers out there doing their thing in the Alien universe. Back to the F100, and by modern standards it doesn't appear to be anything particularly special as far as Casio goes. It had an LED light behind the display, alarms, date and stopwatch functionality, and looked like a very basic utilitarian plastic watch. That aesthetic though is exactly what makes this watch so appealing to me. Not only does it reek of 70s and 80s science fiction, but the buttons on the front make for a sleeker and debatably more accessible wearing and time-setting experience. The model originally launched back in 1978, but went out of production during the 1980s. I did want to try and get hold of one for this video, but the cheapest I could find was nearly $600. I guess like other retro technology that was very affordable at the time, games consoles, I'm looking at you here, nostalgia in combination with limited supply and increased demand make for very expensive prices. The solution to that problem is the re-release A100 range, which must be popular as the first one that I bought was actually stolen from me at airport security. I'll just start by saying, while there are some attractive models in the range, I think I would have much preferred a direct copy of the all-black plastic original. It has a chunky retro look and feel to it that these more polished metal case models simply don't recreate. While I love the design of these watches, I have noticed that mine is really not holding up that well in terms of condition. I've been wearing it on and off for less than a month, and there are already significant signs of wear and tear going on, particularly on the face of the watch. This is likely a combination of factors. Primarily, it is a very cheap watch, coming in between $20 and $30 for most models, so it isn't necessarily built to last. It also features a number of surfaces that are highly reflective and so prone to showing up scratches. Finally, while I think ergonomically the buttons on the front might be preferable, it does also increase the likelihood of damaging the face of the watch while operating the light or indeed other functions. If you were to search online for the Simani E125, there are actually a few cool things that you might stumble across that I thought I would flag up. Firstly, there are 3D printed prop versions of the watch that you can use for fancy dress outfits. These retail for around $75 but aren't actually functional watches. You can also buy just a 3D printed orange case component, then attach two A100s together with a customized strap to create a functional piece. Including the watch's strap and component, this would also come out to around $75. In all honesty, I think this might be the better of the two options. Finally, you can buy a finished piece that someone else has already customized, including the two watches, but I would advise against this, as the work is extremely straightforward and people are trying to charge between $150 and $200 for it. Personally, I do think fancy dress or a display piece are the only real reason why you would do this. It doesn't actually make for a practical piece on wrist. You can kind of tell that is my opinion, as I've opted not to spend the extra for the purposes of this video. Something that I think would be really cool on the channel for the future is if I manage to shoot my watch reviews in similar styles to the films that they come from. It's something I've tried before, making a Sin City style review for my Kuo Royal Smith. I think I flopped there, and indeed here, pretty hard. There is a reason that science fiction films tend to have huge budgets, and I just think it's extremely impressive when they manage to create a believable world on screen without one. Sadly, not something that a budgetless individual like myself can possibly hope to recreate accurately, but I did have some fun trying. Though obviously there have been a fair few conventional shots in this video too. To conclude, I think part of the appeal of Alien is it does such a good job of portraying the reality of space exploration. It's a privately funded operation with all kinds of shady hidden motives going on behind the scenes. You only have to look at the privatization of modern space travel in real life to see that this is a grimly accurate vision of what space travel might be. Only in Alien, it isn't necessarily the cream of humanity that sets out into the stars. It is those who need the money the most. The characters are believable as a result, and their costumes reflect that, a mixture of battered uniforms and personalized adornments. The Casio F100 fits into that aesthetic perfectly. It looks futuristic, yet inexpensive. The kind of thing that you could easily see being given out as basic equipment to a crew that you view as expendable. I actually think that the A100 is among the best looking watches that Casio currently produce, but I would be happier still if they had an all black plastic variant that mimicked the original more closely. The fact that this watch is so affordable makes it a solid value for money proposition. If you're a fan of the film as well, I think that's just a really nice added bonus. Successful or not, what really matters to me about making videos is whether I enjoy the process or not, and I've loved trying to put this together, so I'll definitely be making more. Let me know in the comment section if there are any film and watch combinations that you'd like to see from me next. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this in future.